Today at Let's Talk Marketplace, we talked about Temu again.
We got Chinese retail expert Ed Sander back to talk about the recent developments on the Chinese front, like Temu opening its marketplace to EU-based sellers and Shein suing Temu over infringement.
Talking about irony. Have fun listening. Let's Talk Marketplace.
The Marketplace podcast with Ingrid and Valerie Dichtl.
Okay, so Ed, a lot has happened around Temu since we last spoke. For example, the share price collapsed. And yes. Shein is covering Temu with lawsuits, and Temu has opened their marketplace for EU-based sellers. So can you give us some insights? Because the situation from my point of view, as someone who's not looking into Temu all the time, every day, it's a bit, diverse, complex. Can you give us some insights? Where's Temu at the moment?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like I said, we I just wrote 3 very much in-depth reports for TechBuzz China about Temu. We actually started calling it Temu Watch because we're going to do this more frequently. And last month in August, we published about the semi-managed model that we talked about, I think the last time, which we'll also talk about now. We talked about the challenges they have with compliance and complaints and about the profitability. Now, if you go back to your question, first of all, the share price. Now, the share price, of course, is the share price of PDD Holdings.
Yes.
But not just Temu, because we have to remember that PDD Holdings is basically 4 divisions. It's Pinduoduo, it's the domestic e-commerce app that started it all. Then you have Duoduo Maicai, which is grocery delivery. You have Kuai Tuan, which is group buying. And then you have Temu. The most important ones here are Pinduoduo and Temu. What happened with their latest earnings call is that the results that PDD presented were actually quite good, but they missed the analysts' expectations by a bit.
Okay.
But what was much more impactful is that the PDD management warned that their profitability will be under pressure in the coming years because of the home market, but also because some global challenges. Now, with the global challenges, they probably mean the possibility of tariffs being introduced on anything that they send from China. But another thing which a lot of people probably don't realize is that they are facing more competition in the domestic market. So in China, because Pinduoduo has been so successful and because the Chinese consumer is looking for low prices much more than pre-COVID, a lot of the competitors like JD and Alibaba have really been focusing on trying to offer the lowest prices as well. So they cannot beat what Pinduoduo is doing, but Pinduoduo does have more competition than before. And what they've said is what they want to go for is they realize that they have to sort of upgrade themselves. That for the long term, they need higher quality products and higher quality merchants on their platforms, which will also impact Temu, of course, because otherwise they will have a hard time surviving if other platforms that offer better quality also go for lower prices. So they want to seriously invest in that in the coming years, and therefore they expect their profitability to be lower than it has been. And that really spooked a lot of the shareholders and the stock price, and that's basically the reason why it went down.
Okay.
Then the lawsuit that you mentioned, what Shein is doing. Shein and Temu actually regularly sue each other.
Yes.
They had...
Sounds like their hobby.
Yeah, I think they were doing that back when we recorded our last episode as well, but it was the other way around then.
Well, as a matter of fact, they sued each other for different reasons in December, and then earlier this year, they dropped both their cases. But now what's happened is that Shein is claiming that Temu is infringing on the IP of Shemu's own brands and their own products.
Okay.
Now, Temu, of course, is not making their own products, but Shein claims that a Temu employee has been asking merchants on the Temu platform to actually copy Shein's products.
Oh, spicy. Okay.
Which if you know a bit about China, is not something that sounds very unlikely.
Terribly unfamiliar, yes.
So it could well be, but of course it is. It seems to be about an individual employee, maybe an individual merchant. But then Temu will not have had enough oversight on what is being sold on that platform. The ironic thing, of course, is that Shein is also getting sued all of the time for IP infringement of their products from third parties.
Yeah.
So, this is something that was quite big in the news a few weeks ago, but for me it was like, what else is new?
Another day in the business, at the office. Yeah,
correct.
I think it's in the news that big because what I get from the market here is that people are still hoping that the Chinese players will just stumble over themselves. You know, that they will just, I don't know, do something that will lead to them, I don't know, canceling each other out, or and everyone was like, oh, the share price has collapsed. Maybe Temu is not as strong as we all feared. So everyone's like, oh, bad news about those guys. That's good for us, I think.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's very important to realize that it's mostly about that domestic market.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, I mean, Temu does have certain challenges at the moment. Customers, consumers are being more critical about it, about product quality. There's the potential for tariffs, both in the UAE and in the US, as you might have heard a few days ago. The merchants are complaining about how Temu is dealing with them and is treating them. And of course, Temu as a platform also still has to be profitable. So there's a lot of things that they need to look after. But at the same time, if you say, do I expect that Temu and Shein will disappear? No, I don't. Like I said, I don't think that they're going away. Also, one of the reasons is because Temu is enormously agile. I mean, in Europe, we're talking about possible tariffs in 2028, right? Temu is already preparing for that to happen. And by the time these would be implemented, unless certain countries do it earlier, they will already have an alternative, and they will already have solved the problem before it arises. So one of the reasons they are doing that is, as we talked about the last time, they have this semi-managed model where they actually tell the merchants, now put your stock in the US and put it in Europe. And then we basically let the merchants ship from the domestic, basically local countries. And in the US, currently already somewhere between 25 and 35% of everything that Temu sells is being shipped from local warehouses.
Oh, wow.
So that's one of the things that they are doing to sort of be prepared for possible tariffs. That a lot of the materials are already sent from inside those countries.
Yeah, and also they also decline and decrease the delivery time, right? Because in the meantime, I also ordered at Temu, and it took like, I think, 10 work days till all the things were here. And as a usual online consumer, you're not supposed to wait longer than 2 days.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So normally, if I order something from Temu, it takes about 1 week to arrive here in the Netherlands. If it's done from a local warehouse, it should be like 2 or 3 days max. Yeah. Now, one of the reasons, like I said, they're doing this is to be prepared for possible tariffs on packages that are sent from China. Another reason is to bring down their logistical costs, because they've been having big challenges in bringing down their logistics, which is for the fully managed model where they ship from China, is a big cost driver. And a third reason why they're doing this, like you said, is to have shorter lead time, so have better customer satisfaction. And finally, and that's one that is maybe also very important for your listeners, is that they can now basically do any product. It doesn't have to be something that can fit in a little package in an airplane. They sell furniture, garden furniture, fat bikes, all that kind of stuff. They sell as well.
What kind of sellers are supposed to be attracted by this? Because as we said, the opening of this, you don't call it marketplace, you call it like a semi-managed model of Temu, but still it's they try to attract sellers that are based in the EU. And I also noticed that they're, I don't know, very friendly everywhere, you know, and it can coming up, and they had a booth and the multi-channel day, for example, in the end of August, one of the biggest events in the marketplace world in Germany. They are reaching out to people on LinkedIn. They are doing presentations and stuff like this. So and they come here with this: no provisions, no conditions, no cost for you to sell for now. Of course, for now, we'll talk about that later. But for now, it seems very attractive. So who are they trying to attract? This is mainly for Chinese retailers that have already a foot in the EU, for example, with an FBA warehousing arrangement, or are they really looking for European brands and retailers?
Well, it's a bit of a mix of everything. So the first thing that they did was that fully managed model where factories and merchants basically put stuff in Temu's warehouse and that gets shipped from China. Then the second thing they did is the semi-managed model where they first asked Chinese merchants that either already had products in the European market or were willing to put products in the European market to sell from local warehouses. Now, basically what they're doing now, as far as I can see, is offering that same semi-managed model also to Western products. So one of the reasons they're doing that is they have hit a bit of a roadblock with the semi-managed model with Chinese merchants, because a lot of these Chinese merchants say, well, that's very risky for me to ship a lot of these products to Europe, not yet being sure if I can sell them there, and have all of that inventory in Europe. And I might have to invest into renting warehouse space or having a third-party logistical service provider that does that for me. So they've had certain difficulties in getting merchants enthusiastic about the semi-managed model. So that's probably why they are now also going for the EU market and EU merchants. Now, the third thing, what they're already working on and they're preparing is to basically have like a 3P marketplace. Because in the fully managed and in semi-managed model, Temu still decides the sales price.
Yeah.
That's, the merchants have no say in that. But in the 3P model that they're working on, then the merchant will be able to determine their own price. And then they will probably also go after, go after bigger brands, like real brands. Because most of the stuff that's sold now on Temu is basically white label products. So, and that is expected to happen before the end of the year. And then they basically have like three different flavors, and depending on the circumstances and the merchant, they can offer one of these three different models.
So as of now, just to clear that up, that it's still not possible to sell as a full-blown seller on Marketplace, and you still have to give up the control over pricing so far. But
Correct, yeah.
This is going to change, I guess, soon. So, but still, as you said, some Chinese manufacturers have been reluctant to work together with Temu. Why should European brands and retailers be more open to that semi-managed model? What is in it for them?
Yeah. To be honest, first off, I think that they will have a difficulty in attracting a lot, especially brands will not be all that interested. Alibaba tried it before, right? And there were a few brands that tried it, but a lot of them stopped. And a lot of them were not interested in the first place, because who wants to be on a platform amidst a lot of what still people perceive to be a lot of Chinese junk, right?
Yes.
So it's not very good for your brand
reputation,
image.
Yeah.
And if you have to give up your pricing power as well, so I have reservations about how successful Temu will be in that. Having said that, what we see is that Temu is using a lot of the playbook of Pinduoduo, what Pinduoduo has done in China. And that's why I always say it's very important to not just look at what Temu is doing, but what Pinduoduo has been doing before in China. And one of the things they did at one point is they started selling brands. They even started selling iPhones. Now, initially, of course, iPhone didn't want to sell on the Pinduoduo platform, but
Guess what?
Pinduoduo,
Yeah.
Pinduoduo just went to a lot of distributors that had leftover stock and started selling like older models at very low prices. And by doing that, they attracted more upmarket consumers. And then bit by bit, some brands got more interested in also using Pinduoduo as a channel. So that is something that could very well also happen if they do that in Temu.
Sounds familiar, sort of. Few years back, Amazon did the same thing with the brands that were not willing to sell on Amazon themselves, or who would prohibit their sellers from doing that. So, and then they started to buy old stock somewhere around. Right. We talked about these similarities between the Temu and the old Amazon approach in a way. I just find it quite ironic that now Amazon in China is trying sometimes to present itself as the better option for Chinese sellers and Chinese manufacturers with their own ideas and own program for them, which is sort of a nice, turnaround in history.
Yeah, well,
in a way.
The interesting thing about Amazon, of course, is that a lot of merchants that are also selling on Temu and Alibaba and on TikTok Shop, they are already selling for a longer time on Amazon. But they, of course, they have higher prices there, but Amazon also has fulfillment by Amazon, so they need to pay a lot. They need to pay for visibility, which they don't need to do now on Temu. So in certain cases, they are just simply using Temu as a second channel. But a few years ago, when Amazon kicked off about 3,000 merchants from their platform because they were cheating and they were committing fraud, then China actually noticed this Amazon platform where a lot of our factories and merchants are selling, it really has got like a sort of a stranglehold on what we can do cross-border. And after that, the Chinese government actually started stimulating the Chinese internet platforms and Chinese internet companies to help merchants sell directly without being too dependent on Amazon. So that's something that happened. And now, of course, what has also happened is Amazon is setting up a low price zone where they use exactly the same model, the fully managed model, as Temu is doing. To have sort of an alternative for Temu users.
Yeah, it's ironic in a way. Talking about ironic, actually, which brings me to the point that you mentioned before, that Europe and with much more vigor, the USA are trying to keep the Chinese players, Temu and Shein as well, out using law and using restrictions, using customs regulations and so on. And I just recently I read an interview with one of Shein's biggest critics in Europe, which is Patrick Zahn, actually, manager of the European chunk fashion retailer Kick, who recently complained about the screaming injustice that Temu and Shein do not comply with the law. Right, just as a reminder, at least 117 people were killed and more than 200 seriously injured in a fire at the textile factory in Bangladesh some 10 years ago. Just, saying. Anyway, is this just playing the devil's advocates here, but is this European moral high horse something that is perceived in Asia?
To a certain extent it is. And I think to a certain extent they are right to perceive it like that. I mean, first of all, let me say that I do believe that there, of course, should be a level playing field.
Definitely. It's just who is asking for it is my point.
And on top of that, I mean, I wouldn't, as I often say, I wouldn't shed a tear if Shein and Temu would disappear. Because I'm really worried about the whole consumption behavior that's linked to it, and people cannot control themselves, basically. But one of the things that I think that we should also realize is that for the past 40 years, we've been making our products in China. Everything got made in China. And it was great because we got low prices, which helped us in our welfare, basically. So we were able to consume more, and it helped China as well because everybody got to work in the factories and the living standards got better, and about 700 million people got raised out of poverty because they were making our products. But at a certain point, China has also gotten more expensive. So the labor costs are now higher. And that's when you see indeed that some of the Western brands and importers are moving their manufacturing to Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, etc., etc. Now, what of course happens if you do this, those Chinese manufacturers, those factories are not going to close. They're not going to say, okay, well, we'll go back to the countryside, right? So the overcapacity that's now available in those types of factories that used to make our clothing and shoes, etc., is now being used to sell directly to us. Now, one of the things that, if you're talking about a moral high horse, what also happens is that you see, especially also in retail lobbies, you see people saying like, oh, the labor conditions in those factories. But hold on. I mean, Temu didn't create those factories. Those factories were already there. They were making our products for 40 years. And seemingly it was all fine then. But if they're selling directly to us, then that should all of a sudden be a problem. Another thing is that the cultural context of those factories is that, yes, people maybe work 12, 15 hours there, but those are people coming from the countryside and they want to make such long days because they want to earn as much as possible in as short as possible a time so they can go back home. Or they need to buy a house for their son who otherwise doesn't find a wife. So we sometimes look at these things through our rose-colored Western work-life balance glasses without putting things into context. So as far as that is concerned, again, I wouldn't shed a tear if these platforms disappear, but some of the reasoning and the criticism that I see can be quite hypocritical at times.
Thanks for going with me on this detour, because this is something that I think it gets debated about too little. But anyway, we didn't have time in the last episode to catch up about Shein. Maybe we still have a few minutes left to talk about them, because sometimes it's forgotten that this is a different model in a way, because Shein is producing their own brands, but they are also opening a marketplace model. They're also opening their platform now for used goods. So they are, I think, from my perspective, they are going in a different direction than Temu. Or is that a wrong perception?
Yes and no. So Shein, of course, basically started as an online retailer of products that they have made themselves. But the most interesting thing about their own production model is that they launch a lot of designs, sometimes several thousand a day. And they order very small quantities of these and put them in their warehouse. And only if these, because basically their website is one big A/B test. Only the products that are popular, they have produced again. So I always say it's such a shame that they make such lousy products.
Yeah,
because the model itself is actually quite sustainable. Because
sure.
If only they wouldn't use it for making clothing with a lot of polyester in it, then that could be really interesting. But
in other cases, that would be if you say like, okay, this is a vertical retailer who was like selling their own clothes, right, and they're producing it like you told us. It could be also comparison if you say now like, okay, Zara is opening also marketplace business. Yep. But they are not from China. They are from Europe. They are also producing pretty fast and so on. But yeah, as you said, the quality of the products, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, Shein is even faster than Zara.
I know.
So nobody can catch up with them. So that's their own products. And if you look at the product mix, then Shein sells 70% is basically clothing, whereas 30% is other products. And with Temu, it's exactly the other way around. As a matter of fact, Temu started out as a Shein clone, but they very quickly noticed that probably because they couldn't find enough factories to produce goods, because those factories are all working for Shein. So they shifted more towards more like household items. Now, what Shein is doing, which is related to the marketplace, is they actually have 4 models at the moment. So 65% of what they sell is self-operated, so that's their own brands. Then in 2023, they also opened a fully managed model, just like Temu did. That's more for home appliances, pet products, etc., electronic products. And very recently, and I don't think that's available in Europe yet, they also opened a semi-managed model, just like Temu. So again, put the materials into the country of destination and ship it from local warehouses. And then finally, you have like a real third-party marketplace. That's about 15% of what they sell. And that's much more like a traditional marketplace where they don't manage your logistics or manage your sales process.
Or your pricing, right?
Or your pricing, correct, yeah.
Right. So apart from where the two are meeting is the quality of the products or the lack of quality here, I think. But from a European brand point of view, is Shein somewhat more, I don't know, approachable if you want to use it as a marketplace?
Well, approachable. I mean, I think both companies are very happy to have anybody sell on their platform, as far as as long as it's to their conditions.
What are their conditions? Do you have any insights on that end, Ed? So, what are like the marketplace commissions, for example, to sell on Shein?
Okay, I think the exact details are in those 3 Temu Watch reports that we have on TechBoss China. And it has a lot of detail about the price setting and the margins for the merchants, et cetera, et cetera. So I would refer to that too, because I don't have all of those exact statistics from the top of my head. But one thing that you do have to take into account is that, for instance, Temu is not very popular among the merchants that work within them, especially the ones that are selling from China. Because they are in the fully managed model, for instance, they are really pressured to constantly lower their price. While there's also a penalty system, and if the consumer complains, then the merchants have to pay 1.5 to 5 times their selling price as a penalty to Temu. And Temu doesn't really share information about why the customer complained. So, and in certain cases, they might actually give you a penalty for the whole batch that you sold, not just for that one consumer.
Wow.
So they are very tough with their merchants. They are basically tough with anything that they do in the supply chain. Even if you look at the warehouses that are being used for the semi-managed model, the logistical service providers are held to KPIs that are much stricter than the regular logistical KPIs. So they're both domestically and internationally, they're like a really tough partner to work with. Shein, again, if you look at the domestic market, a lot of factories are very happy to work with Shein because Shein also helps them to improve their business. They share a lot of data. Some of their core 300 manufacturing partners actually get like a sort of ERP system that they work with, Shein's ERP system, so they constantly can see how their products are doing and what they actually need to produce. So, and if they have quality issues, then Shein actually sends people to their factories to help out, to solve the problem. So they are actually considered to be quite a good business partner. Now, I don't know if that also applies to selling on their marketplace, but they have a better reputation than Temu in China, at least.
Interesting. Right. I guess we have to leave it at this because we're already way over our time. But I guess that was our update on Temu. And I have a feeling it won't be the last episode in which we talk about it. So maybe you can just, reserve a spot for us in the future because I'm sure there will be lots to talk about soon.
See you in
again.
10 episodes, right?
Yes, possibly. Right. So, but for today, thank you very much for your insights and thanks to you out there for listening. I hope we could shed some more light on these players. Right. And that's it for now. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You listen to Let's Talk Marketplace.
the Marketplace podcast with Ingrid and Valerie Dichtl.